Good afternoon, Frank. Welcome to another episode of Everyman BJJ podcast. Frank Carreri, Frank Forza, Super Strong, and Noah. Um, it, it's already according to my calendar, the 43rd week of the year. And we started this podcast series off in mid-December, December 15th, actually. So we're right at 10 months into this experience. And we didn't start this podcast with any intention or any foresight as to where we would be a year from then. So, it's quite remarkable, just the change that that at least that I've seen in a year that's gone by. Almost 250,000 Americans have perished in this pandemic, and I don't mean to start the show or start this episode off on a down note, but it's really humbling. It's really humbling to consider how nature and how how vicious reality can be in our lives. You take, I think before now, I would have taken for granted just going out to Starbucks, getting a cup of coffee, sitting there for a little bit, enjoying it, and maybe going shopping or something and then coming back. Now we got to wear a mask, and I got to tell you, every time I wear a mask, I feel tension in my body. It's because not that I'm reacting, like, not that I have any issues really with wearing a mask, but there's some kind of, the body kind of holds tension a lot of times. And I'm gonna throw out drop a little knowledge to you, Frank. Frank, what's the most powerful muscle in your body? Take a guess. You might know this.
I was told, years ago, I came across information that suggested that it was the tongue, that pound for pound or ounce per ounce, the human tongue is like crazy strong. So that's my guess, would be the tongue, the human tongue.
Yeah. I don't know about maybe ounce for ounce, from that perspective, it's definitely, like a Conor McGregor level powerful pound for pound. But actually, when we do jujitsu, and this is how this relates to jujitsu, by the way, is we hold a lot of tension right here in our jaws. Okay, if you can humor me real quick, just feel this muscle right here on your jaws. Now I know mine's well coated with this beard of mine, but this muscle right here, this big muscle right here, that's called the masseter. That's called the masseter muscle, and it connects through a little spot right here, up here, called the zygomatic arch. And if you press into that, which if you've ever done jiu-jitsu, you've pressed into your buddy's jaw like that. That's how you get them to move their jaw over. That zygomatic arch where the masseter muscle connects is very tender. And I noticed that when I'm wearing a mask, I feel a lot of tension right there, where the masseter muscle, which is the most powerful muscle in your body, by the way, where it connects to your bones right there at the zygomatic arch. Now I'm going to ask you, or I'll tell you another little piece of trivia. This muscle, just on your molars, contributes up to 50 pounds of pressure. Now on your incisors, up to 200. Up to 200. We were designed to rip flesh. But I will throw out another question for you. How much pounds per square inch do you think a cougar with this incisors, how much do you think it would give?
Well,
A
gosh,
cougar.
I've heard that alligators are well into the thousands, so I'm going to say that a cougar is, let's just say 4,000. 4,000.
Three, not that large. It's 350. A hyena is supposedly the most with 1,000 pounds with its jaws. They've tested it somehow, but I researched on the just quick search on online. Cougars, mountain lions, they can exert 350 pounds. So the best we can do is is 200 in our incisors, or the
Yeah, but
average.
if theirs is 350 pounds per square inch of bite, but then the question is how sharp are those teeth? Because you could have something that's super sharp that bites into you at 100 whatever pounds per square inch. Like it could have less power, but when you're dealing with a sharper blade or a sharper tooth, like a shark, I mean, a shark could probably bite you at a fraction of, right? It could just nub you with its teeth, right? Just nub you, not even trying to hurt someone. And
Yeah.
you could be ripped apart, the gash. So it's the combination of that biting power plus what kind of silverware or toothware are they working with?
Oh yeah, and sharks have disposable teeth. They have rows and rows, like built up like this. Sharks have like built up rows and rows of teeth that are meant to fall out, and they grow more. So they are, yeah. Sharks are really scary predators. I mean,
But
they are.
the thing that makes a mountain lion, so I mean, let's imagine if you had a dog that was attacking you, right? A particularly strong breed of dog that was attacking a bigger dog, a pit bull, a Dalmatian, a German Shepherd, whatever. You're mainly dealing, if a dog attacks you, you're mainly dealing with jaws. You're just dealing with the jaws. Their head is coming for you somewhere. It's going to bite your calf. It's going to bite your groin. It's going to, jump at your neck. They're going to do most of all of their damage with their mouth. If you were dealing with a cougar, with a mountain lion, with something else out there, you've got to deal with the claws. I mean, those claws are coming at you. Those are
Oh,
sharp. So those are like their jab, right? That's kind of like their jab. It's not going to the claws are not going to kill you, but they're going to distract you and they're going to just maul you with that. And the terror that, the other thing is a lot of things are preparation. When we train, those of us who train in the martial arts, we train for other humans, right? Other humans, a self-defense situation, tournament situations, training environments. We are training for other humans. We get accustomed to the ways in which
mm-hmm.
humans will try to attack us. And then we get accustomed to looking at people's bodies or feeling people's energies even, and intuiting or feeling when we clash with them, perceiving what they want to do. If you get really experienced, you get good at feeling your opponent, what they want to do. Even if you've never trained with them a day in your life, you can feel their intentions. You can feel what they're trying to do when you're really experienced, when you're really good. But when you throw in a big lion attacking you or whatever, an animal in the wild, it's like, how many of us, you just don't, how many days out of the calendar year do we train preparing for that? Like, what in my whole brain, there's probably like 90 minutes of what would you do if a cougar attacked you? Like just things that I've read, right? Real life practice. I have never been in a training environment where we sat there day after day and we're like, this is what you do if, so it's a very foreign thing. It's a very theoretical foreign thing to think of an animal attacking you, let alone if you're in the water and something like an eel or a stingray or a shark, now you're really out of your element where you can't move as well. And you don't have full uses of all your senses because you've only got certain senses, and the person who might not be terrified on land, right, against another human could very easily be terrified in the wild with an animal in the ocean. So really, how much we just saw the video with the guy here in Utah where I am, and actually not very far. Those Provo Mountains are very close. I mean, that guy's within, less than 10 miles away from me is where that happened. And so when you see that, obviously the video is compelling. You got 6 minutes of video, and the guys, I don't know how the guy had the presence of mind. I mean, think about this. He runs across the big Cougars, the Cubs, right? He runs across them at like 5 o'clock. And he's on the trail, and I guess he's on the trail alone. And then I guess he realizes that Mama Cougar isn't far by, and she makes a little cameo appearance, pokes her head, and he's like, oh man. So he's walking backwards, right? Maybe he kind of knows the do's and don'ts, a guy who's a little bit outdoorsy. He suggested he was good with a firearm because he's like, damn, where's my firearm? Right? Why didn't I bring my firearm? So this is a guy that, has been out and about a little bit, knows about the outdoors a little bit. And so when for him to flip the camera and be like, I want to film this, like, because at that moment there's a lot that goes through your head. For him to have just goes to show you that younger generation, right? 22, 25, 19, the first thing they could think, right, is like, oh wait, a cougar is about to come at me. It's pretty big. I don't know what's going to happen next. Let me make sure I keep the camera rolling, right? Only these 20-some-year-olds, like our generation, I can tell you this, that's not going to occur to me. All right, I'm of a different generation, not native. I didn't grow up with a cell phone in my hand. I'm thinking about, and in fact, when he throws the rock, I think he might have thrown that rock sooner if he'd been less concerned about filming.
Maybe we're seeing this generation with the iPhones, an evolution in human existence, because here, let me film my own death so that you will learn. There's like some strand of DNA in us. It's like, here, let me record how I die so that somehow it'll be played for future generations
if I was
of survivors.
I've been, I was a journalist for many years. I still do some freelance journalism. And one of my top 10 questions to him would be, okay, why was it so important to keep the camera rolling? Like, what is it in you? Do you have a film background? What do you do? It's an incredible and compelling video. So it's viral. That thing will run for years and years and years. He can build a brand around it if he likes. But again, it does beg the question: if a cougar, like when we look at like, okay, top 5 things to do if a cougar is stalking you on a trail at 5:15 p.m. Is holding your cell phone one of those? Does that help your calls? Right?
No, this is like a
or hinder your calls.
This is like holding a this is the like in what is that, the exorcism. I'm holding a cross in front of me. Cougar, this is a cross.
And I wonder, this may sound like a foolish question.
This is a talisman.
But I wonder if that influenced the tiger, because the guy was saying, right? I mean, the cougar.
Yeah.
He was saying, like, okay, stand big, stand tall, right? That's one of the things you read when they say, like, if a cougar, something confronts you there, stand big, make yourself look big. Well, if you have a cell phone, you can't Conor McGregor project, right? You can't, like,
I can't walk like that either.
Schwarzenegger in his prime, right? Schwarzenegger in his prime, like that level of, like, make yourself big, make yourself look threatening, make yourself look menacing, intimidate the cougar. I don't know how intimidating. It's kind of harder to be intimidating when you've got your cell phone there. And even with what's interesting is even the eye contact, right? So from some of the stuff I've read preliminarily.
Oh my God.
But preliminarily, you're supposed to, like, keep your eyes on the cougar. Part of that is if it pounces at you, you got to be ready. I wonder if the eye contact itself tends to keep them at bay and keep enough fear in the mountain lion or the cougar. And if that's the case, if the eyes play a role in this dance with the cougar, then I would argue that having your cell phone out is a distraction because it distracts the lion like away from your eyes in some ways. If you're just like all in on like, hey, I'm putting 100% of my energy on this cougar, I'm going to be ready. I'm looking at him. I'm making myself big. When you throw that cell phone in the mix, the monkey wrench, when the cell phone becomes so important, like this guy's list, the guy who's filming, God bless that he's alive, right? It seems like on his list, number one thing was, let me try to survive this. Number two thing, let me make sure I film it. Like, that's not in my top 5, man. Like, and you know, I had a mountain lion incident we can talk about.
You did
get all that. We can talk about that. But I did find that I'm happy that the guy got out of there. I do quite a bit of hiking. I love that. So it hits close to home. I've had an experience, not nearly as chill as that, but I had an experience with a mountain lion up in the Santa Monica Mountains that we can talk about. So this actually hits close to home. And, you know, imagine if you'd had your kids or, you know, imagine you could be out there. What also is interesting is I wonder, like, little things like, so let's say you go hiking in these mountains and it's getting close to dusk, right? And dusk sometimes when, you know, that some of the wildlife will come out and you might see a cougar or mountain lion once in a real moon. And by the way, the BYU here in Provo, near where that trail is, it's the name is the Brigham Young Cougars. That's the name. So it's known that there are cougars.
Oh. Well, they just beat my alma mater in football last week, by the way. Cougar versus Cougar, by the way.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, alma mater, University of Houston Cougars and BYU Cougars. It's Cougar squared.
So we got the Cougar theme. So we're at about 4,000 feet here, just at street level. If you walk around the street level, you're at 4,000 feet altitude, right? You don't really. You get up into those mountains, and you're not even high up. You could easily be 6,000. Well, you're starting to get in territory where there's interesting wildlife out there. Right? You're at 6,000 feet, and what's interesting is I always wonder if the chances, and I bet you there's research on this, and I bet you that we could probably answer this. The fewer people there are on a trail at a certain time, maybe the odds go up. Like if there's a heavily traveled trail, right, on a Sunday afternoon, and a lot of people are walking that trail, the odds that you're going to see a mountain lion probably go down. They hear the noise, they hear the footsteps, they hear people talking. And I think that, you know, again, conjecturing, but that probably discouraged them. If you're there at 5 something and you see these little baby cougars, the mama cougar, probably that trail's not that busy. So, you know, the cougars aren't hearing anything. They're thinking that everything's fine too, because they probably don't want to encounter you, right? So what's interesting though, Noah, is that, so what I'm saying about that is if you're out hiking, like if I felt like I have the trail completely to myself and I was in a place there might be cougars, that might be something to plan for. It's a long shot, but you might be aware that if you're on the trail at 5 or 6 p.m., place where there are known cougar sightings and you're not seeing anybody and you feel like you have it to yourself, maybe be a little more aware versus if there's a lot of people there, then the odds are that these animals are steady stream of people. They don't want to, you know, there's 4 people, whatever. I mean, you know, they're not looking for trouble like that. So that's one thing to be aware of. This is what I was thinking about also with it. Like, you know, the stuff that I read was that cougar was not actually, that some of the experts were saying the cougar was not actually trying to, like, it wasn't trying to kill him. It didn't really want to hurt him. I guess it was trying to scare him. Did you read anything to that effect?
No, I didn't get into it that far. You probably went a little further, but it was terrifying to me the way that cougar would it's walk. It was just like, you know, in a walking along there after him, and then you see its front paws get up and like this. And, you know, it to me that would look like more of an intimidation move. You know, like a nature just trying to say, get the hell out of here. But don't be a ball of yarn and take off running, because that'll, you know, the prey instinct in that cougar would get going. So if I feel like if the guy would have turned and ran, then that cougar would have been like, it's on, you know, just because of the prey instinct. but I do think that his aside from wanting to record his own death, I think that his approach of just keep backing up and keep moving and making noise of some sort was helpful. But I would have been throwing rocks. I would have been throwing more rocks that.
This is the thing that there's little things that I came away with. One is that throwing a rock at an animal or a human, it's like a universal language. Like everybody understands you just threw a rock at me, right? Like in any language, in any species throughout the animal kingdom, everybody understands like, dang, he just threw a rock at me. I mean, because once he throws that rock, that cougar is, just bolts like the fear of whatever is in that cougar. And yeah, it begs the question, like I said, when you're sitting there with your cell phone, it begs the question, like, at what point do you have so when I had my incident, I'll talk about the mountain lion incident in Santa Monica. When I was there, so I was like, it was roughly the same time, maybe like 6-ish, Santa Monica Mountains, beautiful place. Surprisingly, weren't that many people on the trail. Kind of felt like I had it to myself for different, long periods of time. And I came across a tree. So it was a big trail. This wasn't a narrow trail. This was a big trail. And there was a huge tree, like arching trees. Like there's a big tree on this side, there's a big tree on this side. And then, there's like an arching tree, like something scenic, where there's this huge tree where these trees are meeting each other and just huge.
Okay.
So you're coming up across that. And I look in the distance, probably like, 100 yards or so, it might have been a little more. And I see the like silhouette of like, damn, that is like, whoa, like that, my human instinct, whoa, that looks like it's a big like cat, right? And so I'm getting closer and see, whoa, that like, that is a mountain lion, right? Like, and I've never seen that. So your first thing is like, it's like, whoa. And so I see it, and it's there. It's not walking straight. I just see it like walk across the trail, and I think it stopped, and then it disappeared. It disappeared. So it didn't walk at me on the trail. It didn't run at me. It didn't look at me. It was like doing its own thing, like 100, 120 yard, 130 yard. It does its own thing, and then it looked like it stopped, but it stopped kind of near the tree. So now I'm thinking that's my way back to my car. That's the only way that I know back. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm pretty sure that is like, that's a mountain lion. And it just disappeared. It just vanished. And there's this huge tree cover there. Where did it go? Is it, on the side of the tree? Is it up in some branches? Where did it go? That really messed with my mind. If I had been able to see it, like, let's just say I could still see it, that would have been a little more comforting in some ways, as long as it wasn't coming at me. If I could still be like, okay, it's there, I'm going to do whatever. But what freaked me out a little bit was like, I don't see it anymore. And then I'm like, that now I'm thinking, I'm not an expert on mountain lion behavior. I haven't researched that. And I was thinking, okay, how do mountain lions operate? If they want to attack you, does he like hang out in the tree and then you come under the tree and then he just jumps from the tree? I don't know, right? Like a horror movie. Like, how does a mountain lion operate if it wants to mess with you? What does it do, right? And then I'm testing my eyes, like trying to look in the tree from afar. Like I can't see it. I'm like, where is the mountain lion? He's probably in the tree. Like cats like trees. He's probably, or it is probably in the tree, right? Now the question is, if it's in the tree, is it paying attention to me? Is it going to pay attention to me? Is it going to jump out of the tree? I don't know. I'm just asking myself these questions. So my first thing, of course, was like, okay, I'm not walking closer to that part of the trail. I'm stopping where I am right now, and I'm gonna like mentally calculate, play a little chess game, like what am I gonna do? And instinctively, so I had a tape recorder because I walk and I record things. I think for anybody out there watching creatively, it's a great time. Yeah, it's a great time to turn off, right? To just turn off the world and empty yourself. But it's also a great time if thoughts come to you, you have the voice recorder there and ready to go. So I had this little recorder. So I had like different, whatever songs, whatever there. So I was just, what I instinctively did is I started talking in the recorder and like talking loud and in a deep voice. I don't know why instinctively, but I thought maybe a deep voice will project power even across the species. Like maybe a big cat or a mountain lion or a dog understands that deep bass or baritone. Maybe they understand that, right? Versus some squeaky high, no offense to Mike Tyson, who's an incredible guy, but a Mike Tyson voice or a Michael Jackson voice. I mean, if they did research, I'm just going to assume that that voice is not going to intimidate the lion as much as a deep, like baritone, Barry White, like voice used in the right way. So instinctively, I start as loud as I can, like in a loud voice, like I'm speaking now, louder. I'm like, let's just be loud and manly, like manly, deep voice. Let's just do that for a little bit. Let's pick up the biggest rock that we can find, right? Let's look for some kind of like big, big piece of wood or a big branch or something like that. Let's take a look and see what's available. Instinctively, you look at the terrain around you and you say, is there any weaponry in my vicinity? Then I, of course, had the mental debate. Can I turn around? And is there another way? Do I know another way to get back to where I want to go? How well do I know this trail? How much time do I have before it gets completely dark? How far would it take me, like, to go the circuitous route? And I decided there that I didn't know that area well enough to do that. No, the only way that I knew. So I was like, that's not an option. I have to go back that way. So I waited like probably 25, 30, 35 minutes. And I did, like you were saying, I did not run through there, right? I did not, this guy was jogging, and that, that can surprise animals too, because when you're jogging, not only, like you said, does that instinctually, like, can bring out the instinctual instincts in an animal to be aggressive, especially if your back is turned to them. It just makes it play. It makes it a chase. It makes it more interesting for them. But also, you can creep up on an animal quicker. If you're just walking and that animal can hear you in the distance or hear you talking or singing or whatever, the animal can easily retreat and get out of there, and you don't even know that they're there because they have preparation. But if you're running, then you might be more likely to surprise the animal. The animal doesn't have time to prepare for you coming into its terrain. So, of course, I walked through there very gingerly. But so I made it through there, and that was my only encounter. I have encountered a deer, like really close to a deer before on a trail. Never encountered a rattlesnake. I always thought, living out west for the last 20 years, I know friends that have encountered rattlesnakes just in the distance. They didn't step on it or anything. I did encounter a big spider in Missouri when I first moved cross country. When I first moved cross country and I drove it, I had this Honda Civic that was like, 285,000 miles on it, and it was on its last legs. And it actually broke down on me in Colorado, 9,000 some feet, Denver, Colorado, a mile high city, which was, we were higher than a mile high, right? A mile high would be 5,000 some feet. We were like 9,000 some feet. And old Betsy just didn't like that. It overheated, had to wait there and take care of that. But anyway, I was in Missouri, and I was in like I always don't want to say the chain because I don't want to impugn them, but the cheapest motel chain you can get, right? Like $30 a night. So I get in there, it's like 1 a.m. and I see this, man, it was huge. It was a huge little spider like that. And again, I've never seen a tarantula. I don't know if it was a tarantula. The closest thing I could equate it with, because it was so big and that's, an inordinate amount of furs, I'm like, well, it looks to me tarantula-esque, right? Tarantula-esque. And it freaked me out, of course, because I'm tired. And so, same thing. I see that spider, and then I don't see the spider. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
You're messed up then.
There's an impossibility to go to sleep with that thing lurking around. You are not, if you saw a mouse and then you didn't see it, you could go to bed. When I was younger, we had mice in the house. Unfortunately, we lived in poor neighborhoods. We had mice. You had to get used. You were going to see a mouse on occasion. Like, it was like, if you were super clean, your neighbors weren't, you were going to see mice every once in a while. And you didn't stay awake until you killed the mouse. You just, you watched your feet and you just like, okay, you put out a trap and maybe you catch the mouse a week or two later, but you're going to go to sleep probably without that mouse. That mouse is lurking. You're not going to sleep when you see the biggest spider of your life. I was like, all right. And so then I'm thinking, Noah, again, man versus this unknown, right? Like this is like Marcelo Garcia for me, like, but it's a spider, right? It's like this is a big deal. So I'm like, so then I'm thinking, okay, when I find the spider and I get close to it, I don't know how fast it is. I'm going to assume that it's venomous. It's probably not, right? Most of them aren't. But let's just make the assumption that it's a venomous spider, right? I don't think tarantulas are actually venomous. So I don't think it was actually a tarantula. But let's just say it was in that ilk. It's like, okay, the odds are it probably wasn't venomous, but I'm not going to make the assumption that when I see a spider, I'm going to assume first and foremost that it's venomous, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, we're making the assumption that it's venomous. Now, how fast is it? Because when you get close to an insect or a fly or a bee or whatever it is, you're trying to, you're targeting it, you're trying to get rid of it. And the X factor is, well, how quick is this? Right? I've seen bees. I've seen flies that I've killed with a swatter that were slow. And then I've seen them where they were super agile and you had to be really on your game and really quick and really like sneaky to get them, right? You see some of those flies like darting. It's like, this is the Usain Bolt of flies and he's in your house. So I was thinking, well, okay, this spider, I don't know how fast he is. And that's the X factor for me. So I'm like, I get one swing at him, right? I got my shoe. I got the best thing I can. I got my shoe, but if I miss him, what's he going to do? I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert on spider behavior. He's going to go find another place, or what does he crawl on me? I don't know. Right. So my assumption was the spider's venomous. I'm not going to sleep before we get that spider. And she could be very quick. And I'm probably getting one swing, like make it count. Like you see it, you're getting one, you better be on your game. You can't strike out on that one. Because then he goes off somewhere else, some hard spot. So anyway, I wind up getting him, or getting that spider, killing him with my shoe. But then again, the other question is, well, are there more spiders? Right? Is that the only spider? So in any event, what's interesting about these things is that even you're still doing a lot of the things you do in jiu-jitsu. You're playing that chess game. You're doing that calculus in your head. You're trying to account for it. And you're facing the unknown because you're not, you came into a situation where you didn't expect a spider. You didn't expect a cougar. You didn't expect a mountain lion in the distance. And the one good thing I would say that really, that comes out of this, like the guy with his videotape, anybody out there now, you're realizing, I don't think that this cougar is an anomaly. You're realizing that if you're pretty accurate with a good sized rock, the odds are that you throw a rock or two, the odds are that cougar is going to turn around. As long as you're facing it and you're looking big, I think the odds are probably pretty good now. You get a good sized rock, whiz at them, they're gone because they're scared too, right? They're scared. They don't know. And the other thing,
right.
that'd be interesting with cougars is, I think cougar behavior would be different depending on different humans. You have some big guy like you who's less afraid, or who's more, who's more assertive, deeper voice. Again, an apple is not an apple. It's apples to oranges sometimes. Some people, little kid, easy prey for a cougar, different cougar behavior. Cougar, John Jones or Brock Lesnar, and looking at it, different behavior probably from the cougar, right? Like this is kind of like quantum physics, where what are you looking at? What is being observed depends upon the observer. What is that mountain lion's behavior? Depends on the human's behavior, right? That was one thing that it kind of reinforced for me, is that, believe it or not, when I watched that, Noah, I came away with our odds as humans. If we do the right things, our odds against that cougar are better than we thought. They're better than we thought.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here real quick, or a little bit, for me to kind of pivot the conversation. We can go back to the cougar story if you want.
Sure.
But I was, as you're speaking, but more so, I just finished a, New York Public Library, uh, phenomenal library system.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring him up because, I've lived and worked in New York City for 20 years. And this gets into a little bit of situational awareness. I started listening to audiobooks, I want to say 2000. Before Audible was really big, I would take cassettes and CDs and I would burn them into MP3 files before digital rights management came out. And I would put them on, and so I would listen to books, because traveling a lot, you can't have a paper copy in front of you looking at it. Believe me, I prefer to read paper copy, but I also find that you can get a lot more done listening and reading, or listening, than you can reading. Although our brain does not treat it the same way. Like, our brain does not encode that experience the same way. But so I developed a strong habit of listening to audiobooks. And I want to share, New York Public Library, I've been, in my time of being more frugal, I cut back on my audible.com subscription. I used to get like 2 books a month for 20 something bucks, or audiobooks, and I cut it back to just one. And now I'm just using those monthly credits for, like really special. I keep myself going most of the time with what I can borrow out of the public library system, New York Public Library. And I just finished a book, because I don't know much about it, but because of this podcast and really deepening my knowledge in the sports, I listened to a book. Let me get the name of it. I think I sent you an image of it the other day. Oh yeah, it's called Striking Distance: Bruce Lee and the Dawn of Martial Arts in America. And I finished it up. It was like 7.5 hours, and it talks about the Chinese and Chinese American experience in the 20th century, and this whole concept of why the Chinese were very hesitant to share their martial arts with foreigners, or with non-Chinese, or even non-Asians. And it was a great listen. I want to just mention that audio book. I'll even throw up a quick image of it if I can. Up there. But I want to bring it up because, as you're speaking about sizing up your opponent and what would be like a monster to me, I thought about how, like, Bruce Lee would go out and he would be, he put on a lot of courage and a lot of confidence in his abilities. And I'm kind of looking through that with another thought that I'm having, which is, as I start to get prepared to compete in IBJJF competitions again, what would be my wildest animal to go up against? And the only thing I can think of would be an ex-wrestler. I think for an intimidation factor for me is not someone who's really highly skilled at jiu-jitsu, but a former wrestler, because they can dominate the match so much. They can just dominate it. And so, what tools do you think I can use? What tools do you think I can use in preparing to go up against what would be my nightmare scenario? Because I don't know I won't know the background of the person when I step on the mat with them. I bow, I give respect to the referees, the judge, and my opponent. And that's probably the first time I'm meeting them. And so, to me, my worst case scenario, I think, is a wrestler.
Yeah.
So I
let
want
me
to know
say
what your thoughts are.
a good starting place. So let's set the scenario. So the scenario is, we all, at different points of our journey, if we're a wrestler, if we're into jiu-jitsu, if we're into cage fighting, we all have opponents. Even the most confident people have opponents where they look at and they're like, wow, that person would be a tough matchup. That person, I'm going to have to dig deep to deal with that kind of person. There are people out there now who just watched the kid last night, the kid Lopez, Fimo Lopez, who just beat Lomachenko last night. Shocked a lot of people. Beating kids only had 15 pro fights in boxing, just beat Lomachenko. Now Lomachenko only has like 16-2. So both of them are phenomenal, still very early in their careers. Kid Lopez is 23. And you've got to look, a lot of people didn't know who Lopez is, but I'll guarantee you there are a lot of veteran fighters out there who saw him even before this and thought, wow, that kid's going to be really good. And that kid's a handful already. That kid brings, and same with Lomachenko. Lomachenko's only got 18 pro fights. When Lomachenko had 7 or 8 pro fights, there were pros like, wow, not sure I want to fight him, or if I fight him, he's going to be a load. He's going to be a lot. So those of us, we're in the business of self-analysis and honest self-analysis. We have to be honest and say, every one of us has an Achilles heel. We all have weaknesses. We all have off days. We all have styles that give us problems. In boxing, sometimes people are phenomenal against conventional fighters. Those are fighters that lead with their left leg and their left hand, and they have a hard time dealing with southpaws. Someone who leads with the right, just that little tweak throws a lot of good boxers off. Oh God, I'm fighting a southpaw. Oh, throws them off. Everything is different. I have to move different. And so this awareness of, okay, we all have hard opponents that are going to be harder to handle, or sometimes we might even think, oh my goodness, like you have a guy like what's his name in Russia, the Russian wrestler, Alexander Karelin, who was like 880 and 2 losses in his career, right? 3 Olympic gold medals. You had to face him, 280-pound Siberian guy who, before the Rocky movies, this guy was running in snow literally up to his navel. He's running through snow and doing all these crazy things, and he's not going to get tired. Like, that guy's a nightmare. Like, in the imagination of most of his opponents, if you mark Alexander Karelin in his prime and he's your opponent and he's on the calendar, you're thinking somewhere, this is a nightmare. This guy could slam me on my head, end my career, alter my life. This guy can pick you up. You can be sprawled on the ground, dead weight. He will pick you up like a bag of, of potatoes and drop you. And if you land on your neck, he doesn't care, right? So that's a nightmare in a lot of people's mind. So let's go with, okay, there's the scenario. What's the solution? Frank, Mike Tyson is your future opponent, or Conor McGregor, somebody that you're like, wow, some part of you is like, I really don't want to face them. Maybe some part of you. Yes, there's these super competitors who want to face everybody, but we're talking about like real world. There is some part of, even GSP would talk about this, where you're like, remember, GSP or Anderson Silva in the, speaking of Bruce Lee, Anderson Silva has a documentary, I think it's called Like Water, right? Bruce Lee used to always say, be Bruce like Lee. Water. Yeah. Great Asian, Eastern philosophers talking about water and the fluidity of water and how water can adapt to all these things. Well, the Anderson Silva documentary, I think it's called Like Water. Before it's the Bruce Lee. Yeah. But the Anderson Silva documentary is called Like Water. So before the first fight with Chael Sonnen, they've got all the cameras on Anderson Silva, and he's on camera saying, I just want to go back home. I just want to go to Brazil. Before the fight.
Wow.
Chael Sonnen, before the first fight, has like 10 or 11 losses. Okay, Anderson Silva hadn't lost in years. I think he went on to win like whatever, 16 in a row, 18 in a row, title defenses, something crazy. And here he is before this Chael Sonnen fight. He's got a chance to shut Chael Sonnen up. He's on another level that Chael Sonnen is not on. Chael Sonnen had never been champion. And he's got to fight Chael Sonnen, and he's saying, I want to go home. I just want to go back to Brazil. I just want to be with my family. Before the fight, like a week,
Wow.
during the fight, he's saying that. His brain is messing with him a little bit, right? So there's something in there, which is he had a rib injury. He was just thinking, kind of like a lot of people, why am I doing this? What if I were to lose to this guy? How could I live with myself? This guy's insulted Brazil. What if I lost to him? I think I'm going to crush him. I think I'm going to destroy him. But there's a part of your brain that's like, well, what if I lost to this guy, right? That's what Luke Rockhold said that when he lost to Michael Bisping, right? He was messing around. His hands were low. And then Bisping came in, blip, and then put Rockhold out. And Rockhold said after the fight, he said, the worst thing about it is not losing. It wasn't getting knocked out. It's that I got to listen to Michael Bisping the rest of my life. Like, he got the last word. He gets to run his mouth. And Chael Anderson, I imagine, was like thinking the same thing with Chael Sonnen. Like, man, I cannot lose to this guy. That puts more pressure on you. That puts more pressure than a normal fight when you're thinking, I cannot lose to him. I will let all of Brazil down. I will never hear the end of it. This guy will be in front of microphones. It will just be, I cannot lose to this guy. So there's pressure on him before that fight. How do we navigate that? That's the thing. Noah has this nightmare opponent. We all have it at some point in our careers. Maybe once you're the elite champion, maybe you don't have a nightmare opponent. You just have tough matchups. But at some point when you're coming up, when you're a white belt, when you're a blue belt, when you're a purple belt, when you're questioning yourself, a lot of times like, am I out of my league? That's a normal thing. Am I out of my league? Can I really ever beat this person? This person's kind of a nightmare. I'm kind of scared to face this person. That's actually a normal thing. Okay. That's fairly normal. 90% of people are going to feel that. What I would say is, when we talk about visualization, now there's a couple ways around that. One is, if you have, you think of your worst nightmare, your opponent. Well, if you're training in an environment that has some of your worst nightmares on a daily basis, right? If you're rolling with Robert Drysdale or you're rolling with Marcelo Garcia.
No, you hit it. I think Robert Drysdale, blue belt Robert Drysdale for me is my nightmare. Because he's got strong wrestling.
So if you're training with nightmare opponents day in, day out, that helps you overcome your fear of nightmare opponents. When your training partners at different points are kind of a nightmare, you're like, oh my goodness, this person, those days when you're up and coming and you're just getting worked over and you're not going to beat that training partner today. Probably you're going to try, but you're probably not. You're years away at best, right? You got those nightmare training partners, which are a good thing, but they prepare you to face the nightmare opponent because you're thinking, man, I'm already facing these monsters in the gym. If you're legitimately training with monsters, then you're going to become less afraid of monsters because you're training with monsters and beasts on a daily basis. So that's one way around it. Another way around it is to be like, okay, let's just say that this other monster you're going to face is some special breed of monster. Maybe you're not training at Andre Galvo's or Garcia's or Hento Gracie's. Maybe you're training in a smaller school, but you're really good, but you don't train with monsters and beasts day in, day out. I know some people that are very good, but they're not always on the mat with killers and monsters and beasts. So what's a way to go about it? The other way to go about it is to visualize that worst nightmare and thinking, okay, what would I have to become? What would I be forced to become to beat that? What would it take? What would it, And so now I'm already working. Now that's, for most people, that's probably a years long process of visualization of training. It's not normally a 1 week thing or a 1 month thing. It's you got to think like an Olympian. Olympians think in 4-year cycles. They think in quadrennials. You got to think in year cycle. What would I have to become to beat person X or champion X or this worst nightmare? What would I have to become? Well, I might have to have it. So one of the best things you can do is imagining, this is the nightmare person. What would it take for me to beat them? Like certain measurables, what would it take? Would it take a certain wrestling style? Would it take, what would I have to be able to do defensively? What kind of cardio? When Larry Owings beat Dan Gable, one of the secret sauces to beating Dan Gable was Larry Owings had phenomenal cardio. And it's lucky that he did, because the third period in wrestling normally almost always belonged to Dan Gable. Larry Owings out-Gabled Gable in the finals. So where he beat Gable, he was more confident than Gable on that day. He was more confident. He believed more that it was his day. He did. I watched the match many times. Owings, you could tell, was like, I'm not losing today. He was the more confident. Dan Gable, I think, had won 181 in a row going back to high school. The guy hadn't lost in 181. You got Larry Owings, who's had, numerous losses in that same time. But on that day, you could not unconvince Larry Owings. He had trained himself mentally, and he knew his cardio was there. He knew he had the scramble ability, and he had psyched Gable out. So he had the confidence. So you've got to think, to beat my nightmare opponent, to beat my Dan Gable, who looks invincible, who looks unbeatable, nobody else in that arena other than Larry Owings' coach, maybe his mama or his dad or his sister or brother, if they were there, I think you'd have been hard-pressed in that arena of 12, 15,000 people to find 10 people who think that Larry Owings was going to win. Like, seriously, who would bet on it? Who would bet big? Larry Owings wins today. But he knew he had a very good blueprint. Now, this is what's interesting.
Oh, you're freezing up on me.
Yeah.
You're getting frozen there. You may have to restart your device because your device might be getting a little too overheated. But this is I'm going to keep speaking for a minute while you reset that device. This is
sure.
This is obviously our Halloween episode, because we're talking about nightmare on my mat. Nightmare on Jiu-Jitsu Street. Definitely. I think a wrestler would be scary. I don't know if you can hear me still. The monsters I was dealing with, that makes me think of this, were the guys from Dagestan and Russia who were coming through Hinzos. And, normally, when you bump, slap, go, before this moment before that, you check and see, do you have any injuries? And without fail, every time I asked that question to the Russians or the Dagestanis, it was like, I don't care about injuries. We're here to train. Oh, I'm like, come on, come on. Because then you knew, like, can I second thought this, rolling with this partner? Because this guy's a nightmare. I can already tell. That's rolling with my nightmare opponents. Wrestlers. I think wrestlers are terrifying to me. It looks like your device reset itself or something. It was starting to get a little messed up there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it changed. Could have just been brief, momentary there.
Yeah, so let me elaborate. So what we need to do is, just like with the mountain lion, just like we need to stare down. We need to stare down. It's like that with everything in our life, man. Like things don't go away. First of all, we have to realize, this is my experience, that 99 out of 100 fears in your head are not going to come true anyway. Like, we have all these fears that are actually not going to come true, and they just wouldn't come true anyway, right? It's not that we're so brave. It's like there's so much illusion wrapped around our fears. There's so much that's just illusion, that's just the negative part of us talking, that has no basis in reality. It's all in our head. We are inventing it. We are assuming the worst. And the problem is, there's a difference between being aware of the worst that can happen, aware of facing your worst nightmare, and like totally being psyched out about it. There's a difference between being aware of it and, you know, like COVID-19. I watch the news, I stay abreast of everything that's going on, I read some negative news, but I don't spend all day soaking and bathing in that bad news and the sky is falling. I mean, you'd go crazy. I would be super depressed right now if I went and I spent 5, 6, 7 hours a day reading the sky is falling headlines. I limit myself. On the other hand, if I had no awareness of it, then I might not be aware of the things that are going on in the world that could help me. That could help me in my professional life. That could help me in my personal life. There are things to be aware of, right? So it is an awareness of fears and an awareness that a lot of the stuff, it's like, these are just things, you know, these are just things that, like, why are they even in our head? They have nothing to do with anything. We have irrational, baseless fears. They have no basis, right? A real fear could be like, okay, you're going to train with this Dagestan guy who is a beast and he's known for slamming people on their head or hard on their shoulder. Well, that's a real fear to be aware of in that case, right? You know, like, all right, what do we need to do stance wise and to prevent this person from just, the fear of a heel hook, right? The fear of a heel hook. Like, what could I do? You know, being aware of how they set up the heel hooks, being aware of, how do you overcome the fear of a heel hook? Well, you spend quite a bit of a time in heel hooks and in slow motion with your training partners. In slow motion, you say, well, if this, then that. If you do this, then that, what should I do here? Which way should I turn? You know, it's spending time there. That's a rational fear, right? To work through. Okay, somebody's afraid of heel hooks, and there's a rational way to work around it. But sitting there and thinking like, oh my God, my opponent has a really big neck and his forearms are big and he has more cauliflower ear than I do. And he looks meaner than me. He probably trains somewhere better than me. And he's won 20 in a row. So now we're psyched out. Like, that's not productive at all. I mean, this is a new day. You're a different opponent. And I've seen people that just stylistically gave other people problems and they weren't, NFL is full of that every week. There's teams that shouldn't win, that aren't as good as another team, and they win. And the fight sports have plenty of that. So we're talking about today, right? What's up with today? And all you have to do when you show up on a tournament, you have to believe today is your day. You can't be worried about, well, I just had a 12-week training camp and I got tapped a total of 308 times in my training camp. And this guy looks better than my training partners. And this guy won gold at the last tournament. So won pans. And then you're totally like scared by that, or you shrink in the face of that. Like
you just said
that can't
something.
happen.
You just said something, and I'm just going to draw it out. You just said something that I think is very, very helpful. And that's, take a rational approach to your fears. That's right. You instead of just living and internalizing and living with all these fears and then developing avoidance mechanisms and avoidance behaviors and feeling that fear all the time, I guess it's just kind of common sense, but, document those fears, number them out, and then just start to work through a logical, like a stepwise progression through dealing with each one of those fears, so that you kind of work it out of the system. That's how, that's so simple, but that's actually profound, because there's a lot of avoidance in different ways. I know I've avoided the mat in some ways for various reasons. That makes a lot of sense. It looks like your side's frozen on me.
The fear of losing is yeah. You can you see me there?
Yeah, it's a little
broken.
broken. Yeah, I can see you. Now it's back. Oh, it's a little broken though.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder if it's still breaking up.
Yeah, it's freezing up on you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. It is.
Yeah, yeah, it's freezing up on. Kill the video
Let,
real quick if you can, and
let, me,
just
let
do
me log let
audio.
me log back in.
Okay.
Now can you hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right. Looks like he's gonna drop out and drop back in. Um, this is actually kind of cool for me to share this as a bit of vulnerability. There are some fears that I've had with the mats, with my own training. Before it was when I first started, it was really hard for me to get on the mats, and it's getting that hot and just being out of breath, and building up all these things about not wanting to train, and avoiding training just because it's hot is exhausting. Well, in time, I got through that process by just going to the mat, getting on the mat, and just staying with it and keep working at it and working at it. And it got easier over time, and my body is adapted. Right now, during this pandemic, not as much training. But here's Frank back. Hey, Frank.
Hey, sorry. Is the audio and video a little better now?
Yeah, well, the audio is
A little
great.
better?
The video is a little pixelized, but I think with, I don't know which device you're using today, but sometimes it helps to restart it before the podcast if you can, because it clears out some of the flash memory that's using. Um, but yeah, we've only got like less than 20 minutes
How
left in
about
the
now?
podcast. Yeah, it's still a little pixelated, but let's just proceed if we can. If it continues,
Okay.
we'll just end the podcast
So
after this
let me know
discussion.
if it's breaking up bad on my end. So I was gonna
Okay,
say that
go ahead. I'm listening.
yeah. So what I was gonna say is, so the fear, there's different fears, right? One is the fear of your nightmare opponent or opponents. The other is just the fear of losing at all, right? Like when Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen, where you've got more ammunition, you've got more skills, you're better, but there's still that part of you that's like, oh my gosh, what if I lose this person? Like what then? And what's interesting is the fear of losing is is actually a fantastic motivator. I would say that of the many great athletes that I've studied over the years, including like Dan Gable and Cale Sanderson, it's very common in the combat sports or the physical sports to see people that hate losing. There's a lot of fear of losing. Like that's actually a great motivator. But again, our greatest strength can be our greatest weakness. There is a point where the fear of losing is just pure paralysis, right? It inhibits, it chokes performance, it hinders performance. And for the vast majority of people, yes, you have the Dan Gables or the Cale Sandersons or the Michael Jordans who hate losing, who are disgusted by it, who want to punch a wall. That's literally how they are. Michael Jordan's not going to be a happy camper around his teammates if they just lost, right? He's not. I mean, that's just Kobe Bryant is not. That's not acceptable. Um, and so these are people also that like pressure situations, or when I say pressure, they might not perceive it. They get better when the moment gets bigger, when the stage gets bigger. The Tom Brady's, the Dan Gables, the Samson, they like that. Conor McGregor likes to make the stage bigger because he gets better, and most of his opponents shrink psychologically because their brain starts to play tricks on them, not their ability, their brain. And so the fear of losing, some part of us has to make peace. Most of us have to make peace, because a lot of the fear that we're carrying, it's not our opponents, it's within. It's our own ego, and it's our own fear of losing, and what that will mean to how people treat us, what that will mean to us financially, what that will mean to us in terms of, okay, if I'm losing a lot and I'm getting tapped a lot, then I'm going to get hurt a lot and I'm going to be in the hospital, and that's expensive, and then that's distracting, and that sucks. And so It's all of the things that we peel back the layers. You and I have done this before. We say, well, okay, if somebody fears losing, we know our athlete has a fear of losing, but let's peel that back. What's underneath that? Oh, I just hate losing. Well, let's peel back. If you lose, what happens? What's so terrible and nasty if you lose that happens? Well, then I'm not the best. Or, well, but, you know, then my opponent can brag. It's a small town and he can brag to whoever, and I see his friends or whatever, or, you know, whatever. We imagine that people like us because of our achievements, right? We're scared deep down. A lot of people don't know it, but they're scared that if I lose and I keep losing, my lifestyle goes. The way people respect me, the seat I get in the restaurant. When I go to the restaurant, they give me the good seat and they comp the meal. Maybe they stop comping the meal when you start losing a lot and you're a has-been or whatever, right? So these are the things deep down. People judge themselves by their trophies, judge themselves by their income. And so the fear is, if I'm not winning at that in a big way, then I am a loser, or I lose all of these things that are important to me. Now, there is a balance there. Some of that can be healthy. As I've said, that can be a fantastic motivator. But a lot of times it winds up being very destructive because it paralyzes people. It makes them more tense. It slows down their decision making in the heat of battle. It accelerates their heart rate, which means more adrenal, more cortisol, more strain on the central nervous system, which means more, the brain doesn't make those decisions. It doesn't process decisions as well. You get prematurely tired because you have an accelerated heart rate, not because of your opponent, not because of the match a lot of times, but because you have been so stressed out and draining your cortisol and your adrenals that now you had a great camp and you were in fantastic shape, and now you've unnecessarily accelerated your heart rate and you're tired after 3 minutes of intense roll. And how much of that was psychological? Not the opponent. A lot of times it's psychological. We came into the match ready for our heart rate to shoot through the roof because we brought all these fears with us and all this unnecessary tension that prematurely fatigues people. So we have to make peace. At the end of the day, no matter how great you are, fear of losing can be a fantastic motivator. I've seen it. But there has to always be that this is not the end of the world. I hate to say that because you need to prepare as if it would be the end of the world. But when you get to fight week, if you fear losing that much and it makes you prepare harder, then you can fear losing right about to the week, up to the week of the fight. I told this to a world champion before, and he won a world title with that. Like, you can be as type A as you want and ultra prepare and be afraid of losing. You got to train your mind that when you get there on fight week, it's your week. You cannot be afraid of that. And oh, by the way, if you did lose, you don't want to think about winning and losing that. Believe it, John Wooden, they won 10 national titles at UCLA, 10 national titles in college basketball. He said in his pregame speeches, his pep talks to his teams, said, I never mentioned the word winning or losing. I never mentioned it. He talked about execution. He talked about how prepared they were, how great their sessions had been. He talked about what they wanted to do. When you are truly focused, we talk about being in the present, you can let the fear of losing bother you during training camp. You can let it motivate you to train harder than your opponents, to know that you're doing extra. They're not training like you're training. That's great. When you get there fight week, you got to throw that out the window. You got to throw the fear of losing. When you get to fight week, it's its own week, and you got to throw that out. You got to believe it's your time. You're the best you've ever been. You're ready to perform, and you've got to focus on being in the moment, doing what you're trained to do, even trusting you'll make the right improvisational reads and adjustments if you need to, but not dwelling on outcomes at that point. When you get to the week of, it's not a time to dwell on outcomes. It's a time to train yourself to dwell on being in the moment, enjoying it, loving what you're doing, being so grateful that you got there and you get to perform, you get to test drive this body, you get to test yourself against the best in the world. It's really about trusting all the work you've done, trusting your training, and then surrendering and saying, I'm as ready as I could ever be. I feel great. And I can't wait to get out there and be in the moment and enjoy every second of it and focus only on your breath and every second. You only focus, in the jiu-jitsu black belt, you have 600 seconds, okay? You have 600 seconds of your jiu-jitsu black belt. You cannot be out there during some of those seconds What if I lost? What's that person in the front row doing? Oh my God, my opponent's really strong. He's really this. And wait, why is the ref doing this? Hey, ref, you messed this up. You can't be doing all these things, right? What you need to worry about is win the grip battle. First, and your effort needs to be, I'm winning the grip battle. He's not getting, or they're not getting their grips. I'm getting my grips. Once I get my grip or my grips, I'm one step ahead of my opponent now. Now, the next move I make, if that goes in my favor, I'm now 2 ahead. Now I'm just worrying about the moment, the process of get my grip. I'm 1 step ahead. Get to the next part of your sequence. Now I'm 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead. And if I just keep staying in the moment and winning the next move, just like a chess game, the outcome becomes inevitable. It becomes inevitable. I don't need to worry about winning and losing. I need to worry about winning every second. If I win every second, the odds of me winning that match go way up. If I'm purely in the moment and I win every second and I'm focused on that, the outcome, the vast majority of times, will take care of itself. I don't need to worry about, well, what if I lose, whatever. I don't need to worry about that because that's not the battle. The battle is who's getting their grips. The battle is who's got better cardio. The battle is who wants it more. The battle is who prepared best. The battle is who wants it more. The battle is who trusts their training, who trusts what their coaches said, even though their coaches said it. A lot of people don't trust what their coaches said. No, I don't think that'll work against them. How much those are the real battles. But when you step on the mat, the only battle is 600 seconds away. I'm winning every second. I'm in the moment every second. I'm getting to my grips and I'm going step by step, boom, 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 just like I trained. And that's it. And that's the whole focus. And then you look up in the end, you're like, well, what happened? What'd you do? I'm not sure. I was just so in the moment. I'll look at the videotape and I'll know later. You know, you're not watching yourself during the match. If you're watching yourself during the match, there's something wrong. That's like monkey mindedness 101. The key is being so at the moment where everything slows down because you're so in the moment and you're fully engaged and everything, but you're fairly relaxed. It's going to help you fight longer. It's going to help you. It's going to help your decision making, and that's the hallmark. The hallmark a lot of times of greatness is poise. You watch the great champions; they are not flustered and fluttered and overwhelmed. They are remarkably poised during the biggest moments and before the biggest moments. They're poised. Poised is the hallmark. So every now and again, you see a Conor McGregor and a Muhammad Ali. But even them, even if you watch Conor, how relaxed does Conor McGregor look at times? When he's not tired, how relaxed does he look? He's floating out there. He's floating. He is a relaxed fighter out there, right? He does things, antics that are a method to his madness. But normally when you watch the great champions, they're very poised. They're very efficient in their motion. They don't waste motion. And that is the mark of confidence. They are so confident in what they're doing. They don't need all the extra nonsense. They don't need to peacock and do all that because they are driven by something inner that says, I'm going to get it done. I trust my training. I trust my preparation. I trust my cardio. I trust my decision-making. I trust my coaches. I trust my confidence. I trust my ability to rise to the occasion. And so when this fear of losing, Noah, what I'm saying is don't throw it away because we need, like I told you that story at one time about my wrestling when I was a senior in wrestling and I went out there and I was the number 1 seed versus the number 16 seed. And I had no adrenaline, no feeling in my belly, no nerves. And I was flat and that hurt me. I was lucky to win that match, but so you don't want to just be flat. You got to have a little bit of respect for that opponent and that they're dangerous and that they can beat you. And there's got to be that. There can be some fear of losing. But when you get there fight week, you cannot be about the fear of losing whatever. It's going to destroy it's going to devastate your performance. What is there is a supreme optimism of, wow, what a great camp. But this is the best I've ever felt. Even if I didn't have a camp, I always just tell myself, like, well, it's just my time because there's no rhyme or reason. I've said this before. I've had camps that weren't great camps, and I've had very good performances. I've had tournaments where I had phenomenal training camps and got upset. So there's not always a rhyme or reason. When you get to be really experienced, you realize that you can have a switch. You don't always use it, but you can have a switch. It's like, look, training camp wasn't that great, but guess what? I'm here. I'm in shape. I'm experienced. I'm battle tested. I got great coaches around me. It's my day. It's my time. This is my mat. And the mindset, some people don't have ideal training camps. You see people in the UFC, they get a fight on 10 days notice, and they win the fight. They Nate Diaz, that first fight with Conor McGregor, he got the fight on 10 days notice. He said he had been like drinking in Mexico on the boat,
Yeah.
But
when you're saying all these things, by the way, I just got to commend you for what you just said. The last 10 minutes or so of you speaking is something that it's beyond platinum, and it's beyond 100 pounds of weight in diamonds. What you just said is so powerful, Frank. And I know one day when people are listening to this podcast and they go through this and they're thinking about their performance anxiety and the barriers, or if they're working on their avoidance journals where they're detailing out their fears, that they go back and they listen to what you just said and really pay close attention to just how accurate the truth of what you're saying. Where if you're feeling anxiety, that's actually, you got to turn that word and relabel it as excitement. And when I wish I had that coach for me when I was in high school band, and you're sitting there and on the line, every person they're doing their audition material in front of everyone, all the band members. You're personally exposed to, and your anxiety, your nervousness is right there. They can hear it when you play that and you play your instrument. And there's like 10 guys playing the same piece, and you're in front of 150 people in the band room, and they're hearing all this, and you feel all that. That's not nervousness. That's excitement.
Mm-hmm.
That's excitement, because you're always going to be excited. You're going to be up for that performance. You're going to be up. That you're going to be on, and to slow it down, and to be in the moment, like you said. I think through what you're saying, and the only thing I can think of before I get on the mat is the one thing that's connected me from the moment I came out of the womb to my last moment on earth is my whole lifetime is connected through my heartbeat and my breath. My heart is still beating since I was born, and I'm still breathing since I was born. And that's the one thing that connects me through all moments. Its rate may change, but I still have the breath. Well, I hate to say it, but our hour and a half is already up. But I think what you've done today by sharing our discussion for the last 15, 20 minutes has taken what would be my nightmare scenario for Halloween. And if I can put that into practice, it'll turn into a Thanksgiving gratitude. So, Frank, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and this experience of having this podcast. Even though I find your neon green shirt a bit ghoulish for me, poltergeist. I really appreciate these moments with you. This is really good. I brought out my demons or my monsters today with what scares me, which is a wrestler on the mat.
Hey,
but I gotta.
God bless our worst nightmares, because they force us to dig deeper and to become better than we otherwise would be if they weren't out there. I mean, if it weren't for the Russian wrestlers, Dan Gable, Cale Sanderson, John Smith, and many others, never would have been as good as they were. The Russians, who were the gold standard of wrestling, forced them to say, man, you better work harder on solving this problem. The Russians forced them to stay up later, work harder. And so, you know, God bless the people out there that give us a little bit of that. They're the mountain lion on the trail for us. We're like, oh my goodness, the mountain. That's, you know, some people have encountered a mountain lion at tournaments, right? They didn't encounter one on a trail.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people they've encountered their own version of a mountain lion on a tournament, on a mat somewhere. And that deer in the headlights moment. And so it's like you just said, wherever you are, when you're at that tournament, just feel grateful that every moment in your life led you to this spectacular moment. You're about to test drive everything. You believe it's your day. And just like you said, just milk it and soak in the aliveness. It's one of the most alive feelings on earth. And just like we were saying, just always remember, prepare and then let go, surrender, and then just be in the moment. All jiu-jitsu is at the end of the day is glorified grip fighting. It's glorified grip fighting. If you win the grips, the person who is consistently winning the grips is with a 95, 97% probability going to win the match.
Wow.
And when you keep that focus in the trenches on grip fighting, my grips, no grips for you, my grips. This is all the My Grips show. Welcome to the My Grips, all My Grips show. Person who's winning, awesome. If you're winning every grip, right? In jiu-jitsu, let's just strip it bare. Let's strip away all the layers. If your opponent, if you show me an athlete who's winning all the grips that they want, they're going to be the best ever. Whoever's just winning the grips like all the time, that's the best ever. I mean, it's going to be that simple, because that's the person that's going to get to the 1 move ahead, 2 moves ahead, 3 moves ahead, 4 moves ahead, 5 moves ahead, submission. So that's the simplicity we have to get to. We just say, look, I'm just here, baby. I just showed up. I'm in great shape. I trust my corner. I trust my team. And I'm just ready to go win some grips. I'm just going to go out there, and all my focus is on relaxing, enjoying this, and winning grips, popping grips, and getting my grips. And when you do that, you get the grip you want. You'll naturally, my throw is there. You'll know what to do because you've trained that. You've trained when I get these grips and they do whatever, I do X. You're already trained to do that. You don't need to think about that. But if you don't get to the grips, you're not going to get into those entries. You're not going to get in those positions, those dominant positions you want. You're not going to. It's a fantasy if we're thinking about, I got to get into my Barambola, but we're not thinking about the grips that get us there. I mean, we got to sit about, I get to my grips and I have a high probability of getting to the positions I want to be in, and then we can worry about submission. But people, we get too worried. Final thing, we get too worried about these faraway things instead of what's right in front of us. Bro, go out there and win the damn grips. Just keep busting grips and winning grips. It's that simple. And keep your focus. If there's 600 seconds, I want you to be the best grip getter in the world for 600 seconds. That's the challenge. I want you to go out there and be the best you've ever been at winning grips. And when you win the grips, trust your training. Go right. That's it. That's it. And then you can't worry about monkey-minded, well, what if this, and the what if game, or what if this, and outcomes, and I'm going to lose my girlfriend if I, whatever, right? Whatever. Noah, go out with your family. We got to do some family stuff. And it's been a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday. Everybody out there, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. All right, keep gripping.
Bye, buddy.
This has been Everyman BJJ podcast. Frank Forza Gripper, Noah. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Gmail at everymanbjj.com, everymanbjj@gmail.com, etc., etc. Thanks a lot, and I will see you again 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific, Sundays. Take care.
See you, bud. Bye, buddy.
Bye.